think Supporting Wellbeing's core purpose is to provide tools and resources for people who deliver land-based programming that will better prepare them to mitigate and respond to mental health challenges on the land. I actually love sharing the origin story of our project because it demonstrates that this project exists because community asked it to exist, and it comes completely based out of community need, not us imposing a program on people. On the land leaders have many participants who have experienced trauma, and they said that they need a Made in the North training program about offering trauma-informed care on the land and responding to mental health challenges on the land. So that is we basically took that idea and ran with it and created Supporting Wellbeing. When we started this project, I was 24 and I was trying to get all these, I was pretty young and trying to get all these people that I've looked up to, Indigenous leaders I've looked up to for a long time to work with me on this project. And luckily a lot of them have said yes.
And so I wanted to kind of parse out what does culturally relevant training mean to you and the project, and why is it so important in the mental health education/response conversation?
For us, it's an act of decolonization and it promotes cultural safety. Our training centers Indigenous approaches to preventing, responding to, and healing from trauma, and it prioritizes Indigenous ways of teaching and learning. So our curriculum it is a two-eyed seeing approach. It does blend some Western approaches with Indigenous approaches, but the Indigenous approaches are at the center, and they are at the center because many of the people delivering land-based programs are Indigenous, and many of the participants of those programs are Indigenous in the Northwest Territories. And so it's really important that the training that people are receiving is it reflects the realities of our Indigenous Northern communities, and it reflects the land-based context that we are working in. I think it's having our realities reflected in the curriculum was really important. So our first module is about creating community. So just creating that sense of community on the land so that people feel supported and creating positive group dynamics. And then we move into talking about setting up the camp for well-being. So considering people's well-being, holistic well-being through every stage of the camp logistical process setup. And even physical setup, how you set the camp up physically so that there's spaces for people to not feel overwhelmed or to relax or having sewing circles and stuff like that. Talk about conflict resolution and communication skills, suicide intervention and prevention. Talk about intergenerational trauma and resiliency. So we talk about the history of colonialism, trauma responses, what trauma can look and feel like in our bodies. And then we also talk about the resiliency of Indigenous communities for continuing to fight against colonialism and work towards the resurgence of their Indigenous practices. And then we end with supporting well-being when the program ends. And that's creating an aftercare plan, coming up with ideas for self-care. And it's not just aftercare for the participants, but also the staff. And one of the goals is kind of to reduce staff burnout because it takes a lot of energy to run these programs and to care for people in these ways. And so also coming up with self-care plans for how you'll take care of yourself during the program, after the program, before the program starts. We've made sure that we've been evaluating what people think of the curriculum, how it has impacted their program since the pilot training. And so we have done some interviews and facilitated discussions with people who participated in the pilot and who delivered land-based programs. And we found that they said the Supporting Wellbeing training curriculum was effective, and they were able to draw on skills covered in the curriculum and apply them in the field when they ran their programs. They felt they had an increased ability to help their program participants feel safe and supported. They had increased ability to respond to people in distress during their on-the-line programs and in their like personal lives, like back in their communities at home. They felt they had increased ability to mitigate risks associated with mental health challenges by implementing trauma-informed and culturally appropriate approaches in their programs. I thought it was cool. They said that increased their confidence in their ability to offer safe and effective programs. And they said that practicing some of the tools that we showed them and told them about actually did help decrease like staff stress and burnout. And hearing the stories was just like super powerful, and it made me feel like, oh my gosh, we're actually like doing something that people need and it's actually effective, and that feels really good. I feel like I'm most proud of like the really amazing team that has come together to work on the project. Our team has consistently embodied like supporting well-being and how we've developed this program. Like, you know, we're not like a small team. We're a group of 7 people from different regions of the NWT and sometimes competing priorities. And we have been able to like work collaboratively through thoughtfully and caringly throughout like the whole process. And I think that has been a really huge highlight of this program, is how strong those relationships have been. So it's been exciting, it's been stressful, it's been rewarding, all at the same time. The biggest draw to MakeWay is that our steering committee has way more agency over the project as being part of the shared platform. So they get to like decide policies and procedures and program delivery. And we felt like that would like support the need for it to be an Indigenous-led and territorial organization. We also really like that MakeWay has like reach into like the NWT or into Nunavut and the Yukon, because we've been talking about like eventually adapting this to be like a tri-territorial program. And another point that was a big one for us was around intellectual property, because with MakeWay we're able to like hold our intellectual property of like the curriculum that we make, and that was really important for people because of just like the history of Indigenous knowledge basically like being stolen and used for non-Indigenous people's benefit. And so people really wanted like ownership over the knowledge that they were sharing.